Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and with the recent Battle Pass drama going on, the controversy surrounding it, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look through our little time machine and go through Hearthstone's somewhat, ugly history with certain mistakes and controversies throughout the years. Some of these will be more of like controversies dealing with like a broad spectrum of things like politics or just that type of stuff, or just general mistakes in terms of like gameplay or features badly implemented or features not included. But I do want to note, before I begin this list, this is not a screw you Blizzard, this is not a screw you Hearthstone video. Blizzard/Hearthstone have added so many more amazing things to this community than they've had bad. And they've created one of the best card games of all time. They've added so many amazing experiences to a lot of our lives. I feel like a lot of us would be a hell of a lot worse off if Hearthstone wasn't around. And I love the game, I love what it does, but I think it's important to reflect on mistakes you have made. I have made plenty of mistakes in my life. I'm sure you have made plenty of mistakes, but it's always important to look back, reflect, and see, how you can learn from them, because the majority of these mistakes and controversies we're about to talk about, Blizzard has either reflected on, improved upon, have grown from. So I don't want this to be a screw you Blizzard video. This is just, let's take a look at the top controversies and mistakes Blizzard has made with regards to Hearthstone and what the implications of that have been throughout time. And again, most of these they've learned from, they've evolved from, but I thought it'd be interesting to take a look back, because there is some stuff that you might not be even aware of, because a lot of creators don't cover this stuff. Well, pretty much none of them do these days. So let's take a look at the top 10 biggest mistakes and controversies made by Hearthstone. So we're going to start off more with the mistake side of things, and then we'll go towards the controversy side of things. So starting off at number 10, this is pretty minor, but it was a big deal, was them introducing Specialist as a competitive format, as like their only competitive format for their Grandmaster system. And basically what Specialist was is you could only pick one class to bring to a tournament. And then you had to pick like 3 different lists. You have like your main list of 30 cards, and then you had your secondary and your tertiary, and you could change like 5 cards in each of those. And it led to the most boring and just mind-numbingly god-awful experience you had ever seen playing or watching competitive Hearthstone. Especially at the time, Combo Priest was really, really like the top tier deck. So it was like a Priest Mirror after Priest Mirror after Priest Mirror after Priest Mirror. And you can imagine how exciting and exhilarating Priest Mirrors could be all the time. You could have Control Warrior Mirrors over and over, where everyone has Lysiana, and bouncing those back and forth, which could lead to... It was just a nightmare. It was awful, and they ditched it after 1 season. And we've only seen Specialists come back, I believe, for 1 week of Grandmasters, and even that 1 week they brought it back was also awful. The games lasted forever. It was an awful experience, and overall, let's just hope they don't go down the Specialist route again. The sideboarding thing's interesting, but not the way this works out. It ends up being a complete mess. At number 9, we have the implementation of Genn and Baku to the game. They basically modified your hero power. So you had Genn Greymane, it would make your hero power cost 1 if you only had even cost cards in your deck. And you had Baku that would upgrade your hero power, basically the Justicar Trueheart upgraded hero powers if your deck only contained odd cost cards. And it made these decks way too powerful, way too consistent, way too boring. It made all the games feel the same, like you were just losing to hero powers. And it was so awful, it was so mundane that even Kibler went on a tirade about, getting these cards either removed or fixed. And after only 1 year, they were Hall of Famed and put into Wild, the only cards in history to be Hall of Famed early, because they were that detrimental, that unfun to the game. And of course, instead of fixing them, they put them to Wild, where Wild has to deal with Genn and Baku to the end of time. But yeah, that was it was a pretty awful experience, and I feel like if you make Kibler making a rant video about how these cards are just not good for the game, and I think you've kind of done goofs, so this was definitely a bigger mistake. Another mistake that Blizzard made at number 8 was rotating Whizbang the Wonderful to Wild. This is something I hear about almost every day. People that love their Whizbang the Wonderful. And if you're not aware of what Whizbang the Wonderful was, or is, it's a 4-mana 4/5 legendary, and if you put them in your deck, it's the only card that'll go into your deck. And then at the beginning of the game, you'll get a random deck from a random recipe from a random class, and you get to play it. A lot of the recipes are terrible, a lot of the decks are terrible, but this was a way for free-to-play players to really enjoy the whole collection of Hearthstone. To be able to play experiment and play with all these different cards by just having this one card. And it was really cool for free-to-play players. And then it rotated to Wild, and they never put it back in Standard. And it didn't even update into Wild until recently. And it's a really odd thing because it's so nice for the free-to-play player. It's so beneficial to them. And I made a tweet recently just saying, like, why not just put this back in Standard? It'd be great for the free-to-play players, and people love this card. So the fact that they recently updated it so that it updates better with recipes, even though it's in Wild, makes me think that maybe with a classic rework, we might see Whizbang coming back. So let's hope that this mistake actually gets rectified. But yeah, that one kind of stands out to me. Number 7, we have another mistake of basically broken launches. A consistent trend in the last year or so of broken launches where the game is basically in an unplayable, unbalanced state. Most historically with Ashes of Outland, we saw Demon Hunter with the uncanny win rate across all formats, Standard, Wild, Arena. It was just broken. I had this tweet I made that basically went viral, basically saying we're not beta testers, you gotta balance test better. And I also had a Reddit post from the expansion before about Galakrond Shaman, which also broke the game, which was a historic thing at the time. Only Demon Hunter outdid it the next expansion. Kind of dealing with that again now in this most recent expansion, Darkman Fair, with Demon Hunter dominating almost every format outside of Wild. They just consistently have these broken launches with unbalanced mechanics and kind of use us as guinea pigs to an extent. We get more frequent balance patches as a result, but it still has that really bad feeling at launch. And this is one of these mistakes that doesn't seem to be rectified, doesn't seem to be learned from, and is still a really troubling thing. And I really hope they start getting ahead of this, because it's really frustrating that almost every expansion is just ruined by like one super dominant class that just isn't a very fun experience. At number 6, we have the Grandmaster system not only being instituted in competitive gaming, which you could argue is a giant mistake which has killed off almost all competitive players from playing the game because it's so hard to get into. But one of the bigger things is the fact that Grandmasters moved exclusively to YouTube, effectively killing off the broad reach of the esports scene of Hearthstone and making it very niche. If you tune into like a Grandmasters tournament or weekend on YouTube, it typically pulls in like maybe 5,000 viewers, at the very best 10,000 if you're very lucky, whereas over on Twitch you would get like 10, 20, 30,000 viewers. And your esports program typically for your game is to use to market and promote your game, and then hiding it on a platform where it's just not very visible to people has really killed off any exposure that esports creates for the game, which again is really counterintuitive to the whole process of promoting your game. And has just been a complete blunder. This one I can't really put too harshly on the Hearthstone team themselves. This is more of an Activision Blizzard thing, where they basically just threw in Hearthstone and like a deal, I believe, with like Call of Duty and Overwatch to YouTube. So I can't really blame them for it, but at the same time, it is a mistake that has happened that has hurt the game in my opinion. And it's one that won't be rectified because, again, the Hearthstone team has literally nothing to do with the esports team, has nothing to do with it. It's just one of those really unfortunate things. At number 5, we have the promise of a tournament mode to be added. I believe they promised to have it added by 2018, then basically saying, it's not worth the resources, we're taking it back. And we have yet to see a tournament mode today. This has led to a lot of stupid things where, like, players disconnect in games and they can't reconnect, and basically they have to redo it. A friend of mine, Luker, he historically was like basically on the cusp of qualifying for World Championships, was in an unlosable position. His game disconnected, and because he didn't have Lethal on board, they had to redo the game. He ended up losing and lost his spot at the World Championships, and stuff like a tournament mode would help alleviate this thing. And these problems still exist. People still lose out because they get disconnected. There's no tournament client to put them back in. There's no tournament client for us to play, to customize our games, to enjoy it. It's one of the most often requested features that would just be awesome for everybody, and it still isn't in the game. It still creates a lot of frustration for so many people, and it's just crazy that going into 2021, we will still not have a tournament mode. And by the way, Legends of Runeterra just implemented a tournament mode into their game already. Come on, Hearthstone, make up for this mistake, get that fixed, get a tournament mode next year. You guys are adding new modes, which we really appreciate it, but man, we really, really would like to see a tournament mode, and would really help the competitive aspect of the game. At number 4, we're going to cover our last mistake, and then the last 3 will definitely be big controversies. And at number 4, removing adventures from the game. then promising adventure content would be free going forward, and then after about a year, starting to charge for them, and then removing adventures entirely from the game. Yes, this is one of the more frustrating, egregious things that Blizzard's done. They made the game more expensive by taking away adventures and putting more expansions in, but they're like, well, we're going to keep the adventure content and you're going to get it for free, which we did for a while. We saw like Dungeon Run and like puzzles and all that. I'm like, okay, I guess we got that stuff for free. And then they're like, screw it. We're going to charge you for like the Dalaran Heist and Rise of Shadows. We're going to charge you for all the adventures that we add in, and you'll get a couple of little perks from it. And then they added Galakrond's Awakening, a new adventure with cards, and charged full price for that. And now we're getting mini sets on top of expansions. And I guess the compensation is we get Book of Heroes for free, which is like maybe an eighth of a regular adventure content every couple of months. So yeah, this is one that's really left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. This has also not been addressed in any way. They've kind of just pretended that they promised this and took it away, because they did. And it's just one of the more frustrating things, because adventures were such a great way for people to like catch up, to have that little bit of a gap to not spend in between expansions. And now the gap between expansions, that you get that little bit of a break, is to spend more money on mini sets. So it's like, it's crazy that what ended up happening from removing adventures, that it really ended up being a net negative, which is really unfortunate, because adventures at the time were such a good, positive thing, and it really sucks that it's still in that state today. Now, our last three are basically controversies, not really mistakes implemented in the game, but I'm going to cover them, and I think it's important because a lot of this stuff is still continuing today, and I do hope that Blizzard learns from it. And first, at number 3, is Amaz being banned from a Battlegrounds tournament, not being allowed to voice his side of things, and then outright quitting all Blizzard Activision games going forward. So we covered this in a This Week in Hearthstone like a month or so back. I'll link that below because that contains a link to Amaz's video where he talks all about this. But what happened was there was a Battlegrounds tournament. Amaz was originally invited. There were some allegations thrown his way during the whole Me Too movement. He was immediately removed from the event. Slissa was put in his place, and he wasn't given any voice to defend himself, to say any part of his side of it. And it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And yeah, Amaz no longer streams Hearthstone, no Blizzard Activision games, and it looked pretty bad. And a lot of it might have been on the pressure of Sunglitters. Had a tweet go viral about female representation in tournaments, this tournament in particular. So Slissa just slotted right in, helping with that representation issue. And to her credit, she knocked it out of the park and did really well. But it was a really kind of nasty thing to happen, and it hurt Amaz really, really badly. And whether you believe the allegations or you don't, I think it's, it was very controversial in that he didn't get to explain his side of things, and it just didn't look fantastic. At number 2, we have Savjz being blacklisted from Blizzard because of his wife speaking out against the company. So Savjz's wife, Christina Mikkonen, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, made a tweet earlier, basically in June of 2020, stating that, Savjz's mental health is at stake and she has to speak out. And that the community manager responded to a tweet that he was offended by a tweet she had made like a year or so ago about basically the Blizzard had laid off a bunch of employees and then was rehiring a bunch of employees. And she just basically said, "Are you effing serious right now?" And the community manager blocked her and then went on to blacklist Savjz from all events going forward, despite the fact that this was Christina speaking and not Savjz. So she made this tweet because basically there was a big Battlegrounds tournament that he was excluded from for this reason, and he's one of the biggest Battleground streamers out there, and this blew up. This got, like, big coverage, it blew up all over the place, and Blizzard couldn't ignore it, so they kind of backpedaled a little bit, and then eventually just said, alright, we apologize, the community lead had gotten bad information from the community manager, and Savjz is now open to be invited to events going forward. And yeah, so he got unblacklisted, but basically it was a huge controversy, and they only backpedaled because there was this big uproar from the community, and we still continue to see blacklisting to smaller creators. I won't mention who, but yeah, it's a continuing trend that continues to happen, and unless you have like a big giant following and you can really speak up against it and get people behind you, it seems to be with them that they're going to continue down this road, and it was really ugly. But at least Savjz is no longer blacklisted. That's great. It's good to see that he'll hopefully be at events soon, because, you know, they did blacklist him, right? So let's see him at Blizzard events. I would love to see it. He's one of my favorite creators. But yeah, it was a real black eye, and not a good look on the community manager, but that's kind of a common trend. And last at number 1, as most of you are probably expecting to see, is the Blitzchung incident. This controversy was mainstream news all over the place. Basically, Blitzchung, a Grandmaster, he had a post-game interview basically where he said, you know, free Hong Kong, the whole Hong Kong revolution thing going on. They're having like a big civil fight over there. Not going to get into the big politics of it all, but he said that. And he was ultimately suspended for a year, and all of his prize winnings was taken away. And by being suspended for a year is basically taking out a Grandmaster entirely, and again, taking a bunch of his money for speaking up. To be fair, he broke their terms of service. You're not supposed to go political, anything like that. Like if he had done like a pro, like American thing, like a MAGA thing or whatever, it would have been the same thing. But would the punishment have been severe? I don't know about that. That's the big thing, is like, would the punishment have been severe? And there's a huge backlash over it from the mainstream media. There was the whole free Hong Kong thing going everywhere. People were boycotting Blizzard all over the place. This even led to basically Blizzard apologizing at BlizzCon, although you could say it was kind of a weak apology. It happened on the main stage by their president. And they eventually reduced the suspension from a year to 6 months, and they didn't take his prize winnings away. And ultimately, Blitzchung didn't really miss a season because the 6 months basically lined up that he missed no time. It didn't really affect him, but it left such a black eye for Blizzard. And I think this is one they've learned from. I don't think they're going to go down this road again, but it's one of these things that you still hear about today, and they have a long ways to go for making up for this really egregious incident. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 biggest mistakes and controversies in Hearthstone history. There are probably a lot I missed, so let me know in the comments below. But again, I don't want this to be an F Blizzard thing in the comments below. Everybody makes mistakes. I make them all the time. And you'll learn from them, and they're going to learn from them. And, you know, it's the only way you can grow is to reflect and look and admit your mistakes. Because if you don't do that, then you are going to make the same mistakes over and over again. Because if you don't look back, you don't reflect, you just never grow as a person, a company, or anything like that. So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and stay salty, my friends.